For years, this little business card sat quietly among photos and recollections of my father's scrapbook. Martin Aviation, Orange County Airport, Santa Ana, California. And it left me wondering, how and why did a quiet kid from Millinocket, Maine end up connected to a flight school in Southern California? The deeper I dug into my family history, the more interesting California started to feel. Not because one member of the family ended up there, but because so many of them did. One aunt settled in Costa Mesa. Another spent years in Santa Barbara before eventually moving further north to Fulton, California. My Uncle David eventually settled in Banning, California. My Aunt Carolyn married a Navy officer and spent much of her life in Santa Ana. Another brother ended up in Riverside, starting his Air Force career in Brunswick, Maine, and being stationed in Guam. Somehow, 7 of the 10 McLean siblings eventually made their way west. Why? I honestly still don't know. Maybe it's because of the booming optimism of post-war California, the sunshine, the military bases, the growing aviation industry, the promise of opportunity, or maybe California simply represented a larger world than northern Maine could offer. In 1948 and again in 1950, my grandmother documented 2 long family road trips from Maine to California in handwritten diaries. Reading them now feels so familiar because California eventually became part of both my childhood story and my own early adulthood story as well. When I was about 6 years old, my parents took me to California to celebrate my grandmother's 80th birthday. I still vividly remember my cousin giving her a ride around town on the back of his motorcycle. At 80 years old, she climbed right on without hesitation. It's one of those memories that somehow stays with you forever. Buried in my grandmother's 1950 diary was one small detail that immediately caught my attention. While visiting family in California, my Uncle Phil bought my father an airplane ride at Orange County Airport, the same airport listed on the Martin Aviation business card. I have no way of knowing for certain, but it's hard not to wonder if that flight changed something. Maybe it was the first time my father saw a larger aviation world outside of Maine. Maybe it planted an idea, or maybe it simply confirmed something he already knew. Tucked into my father's scrapbook was this photo of him and my grandmother arriving in California together. I don't know exactly which trip this photo was connected to, but it feels important somehow, like I'm watching the story slowly begin to unfold. Years later, I would uncover an American Airlines application hidden among my father's papers, and suddenly those California years started feeling much more important than I had realized. Maybe California didn't suddenly enter our family story at all. Maybe it had been quietly pulling members of the family west for years, and somewhere in the middle of all that, a young pilot from Maine found his way into a much larger aviation world.